Hello, I'm Nick Tyrone, neoliberal centrist dad, and I'm here to talk to you today about something terribly serious that I have been thinking about talking about for a very long time and have avoided because it's a really tricky topic that upsets a lot of people to the point that it's really something that you're not supposed to talk about in polite circles. It's considered politically incorrect. It's considered just, I don't want to say verboten, but, and it's becoming less so, I think. I think we're opening up and getting to a point where I think collectively we've understood that we need to talk about this. And it's the topic of migrant hotels across the United Kingdom, but particularly in England and Wales. Now, over the last year and a half, I have travelled a great deal across England and Wales. Also Scotland and Northern Ireland, but much less. I've travelled much more extensively in England and Wales for my job, which is, so I've got a day job, but I also do freelance journalism. I'm also writing a book, which I'm not allowed to talk about yet until the publisher announces it. But anyway, all of this has resulted in me travelling not only across England and Wales, but to parts of England and Wales that, shall we say, are they comprise the left behind towns. They are some of the more socioeconomically deprived parts of the United Kingdom. And along the way, I have both stayed in migrant hotels. I have stayed in a migrant hotel myself as a paying customer, I hasten to add. But also, even when I haven't, I have been in towns where there are migrant hotels, and I have witnessed the migrant hotel firsthand. And I've seen this many, many times. They exist. They're quite ubiquitous across the United Kingdom, is what I have concluded. Or at least ubiquitous across England and Wales. I don't want to talk at a turn about Scotland or Northern Ireland, which I know much less about on this front in terms of if they exist at all, and if they do, to what level. So I'm really going to just stick to England and Wales. The best way to describe the migrant hotels is they're a mix. They're very varied. Sometimes you have hotels where it's very clearly all migrants, and that's who are staying in the hotel, and that is it. Oftentimes, and those are the ones I've stayed in, they're a hybrid. So they try and present themselves as just a sort of normal hotel. It just happens to be that a lot of the clientele throughout the hotel are asylum seekers. They usually try and separate this in some way. So they have some part of the hotel which is migrant hotels. They have some part of the hotel which is for a more traditional, just paying customer off the street. And sort of to get you, sometimes it's to try and make it seem like, almost like you could stay there and not know. I mean, the truth is, you'd have to be pretty dense not to know. But I think there's this idea that perhaps, like an American tourist comes in and doesn't really know anything and might just sort of go, I wonder why that bit of the hotel is all boarded off, and why are there blacked out windows there? That's really, really peculiar. I think that's the essential idea, that they could possibly, in the case of someone fairly naive or just really not up on any UK politics whatsoever, would just not even notice. So that is one type of sort of migrant hotel, where, and to keep in mind, in these hotels you're probably talking about 80%, maybe 85% asylum seekers, and the rest just being probably empty rooms, or the occasional punter like me who for whatever reason wants to stay in Rotherham or Hartlepool for whatever reason. So usually, because I'm doing research or I'm a journalist. But anyway, I digress on that point. Sometimes they are very heavily sort of guarded. There's security outside, and if you're staying there as a guest, you have to constantly show your ID or your hotel room key or whatever, what have you. Sometimes it's a real free-for-all. Usually with the free-for-alls, you will see a lot of people hanging around outside. They generally are young men, so it's generally young men, usually from the Middle East, Middle East origin. Guys, usually about 18 to 30, I would judge, but on site. And they're hanging around, they're smoking, they're bored. That's it. They've come to Britain for whatever their reasons are, and they are in these hotels that can't work, and they're bored, and they're really really bored. Now, I would say, in terms of how this is discussed in the UK, I mean, on the left, this is a real no-go topic. I think, as most British viewers will know, it's just not something you're ever supposed to discuss. And if you have to discuss it, you have to say what Darren Jones, the Labour cabinet minister, said on Question Time the other day, which is, "Oh, this is all women and children." Again, the statistics suggest that this is not the case at all. The government's own statistics say it's somewhere between, depending on the study, 70 to 80% young men. And having been to the hotels myself and been around them quite extensively, I can say that marries up. It's actually fairly rare to see women or children. I mean, part of that might be as well that it's the men going out, it's the men hanging out outside, all that sort of stuff, which I understand, might lead you to a distorted view. However, the statistics back up the fact that it's mostly men in these migrant hotels. And I think that's an uncomfortable thing for the left. They don't really want to face that. I think, and I think that just really fuels the right to a large extent. I think that really fuels the right-wing narrative that, this is all a cover-up. We can't talk about this because the left want to pretend it's not happening. They want to pull the wool over your eyes. It's a conspiracy theory, all that stuff. So I think not talking about it just makes it worse, because I think one of the big problems that we've got here is we've got the migrant situation in terms of we've got a lot of people coming into the country, usually on the small boats, and we don't quite know what to do with them. We obviously aren't processing the claims in any way well. We don't have actual good paths towards people who are genuinely seeking asylum to get it, and it's a bit of a mess. And I think the biggest problem here is we've taken that mess and we've sort of transplanted it onto the poorest and most hard done by communities in England and Wales. And then we're, in a sense, there's a surprise that has caused a reaction, and that there's a huge blowback for that politically. I mean, I think it's worth pointing out, if we're on the politics of it, it's worth pointing out that this ballooned under the Tories, and really, you can say the Tories are to blame. But certainly it happened under the Tories' watch, and they have to carry the can for a lot of it, which is why I find a lot of the Tory bleeding about it now, about why don't Labour control this, why don't they do that, a bit hollow, given the Tories didn't do anything about it. Or actually, worse, it got much worse under them, and they made a lot of missteps. Having said that, the Labour have taken a very odd position on this, which is they've said that they will stop using migrant hotels as of 2029. So in 2029, they stop using migrant hotels. The issue with this being they haven't said at all what they will do instead. So what replaces the migrant hotels in 2029, we don't know. And in fact, the inference is that Labour will use the next 4 years to figure that out. Now, this strikes me as very politically naive on Labour's part. And it just seems like a gift to Farage and Reform. So they're saying in 4 years' time. So 4 years' time is 2029, which also happens to be the year of the general election, right? Unless Labour go early, which is looking increasingly unlikely. But they have to have it by 2029. So they're going to go into the 2029 general election campaign saying that, oh, by the way, this thing that we haven't taken care of the whole time that we've been in office. So it's as bad as or worse as when we took over, but now we promise that we'll fix it. We don't know how, but we promise. And they think that's going to work in the face of Farage and Reform saying, we'll just stop this and it'll be over. And I think a lot of people will give Farage the benefit of the doubt on that. Or certainly they'll say, we trust Farage to do this more than anyone else, because at least he's untried, and we know the Tories are unable to do this because they were unable to do it, and we know Labour are unable to do it because they have been unable to do it, so why not give Farage a shot? The idea that Labour can go into the 2029 general election saying that they're going to fix this problem that they haven't fixed yet, that just That's just stupid. I'm like, sorry if I'm. Tell me if I'm missing something in the comments, but it just strikes me as that's really, really dumb. Like, people aren't going to believe that. They're just really not. And I think one of the things that has to be covered here, because I think people will point it out, I'm sure, in the comments if I don't, is the Rwanda plan. So one of the things that you will get on the right, particularly in Tory circles, is, well, the Conservatives had a plan, and that was the Rwanda plan. So we were going to, basically, the idea was we were going to, instead of taking the asylum seekers and putting them in hotels, we were going to take the asylum seekers and send them to Rwanda. There were several huge problems with this plan and why it was completely and utterly impractical. And in fact, as bad as the asylum hotels are, and as poor an idea, particularly over the long term, as they are, I'd almost have to say they're slightly better than Rwanda, because Rwanda is so mad and so bad an idea. So one of the problems with Rwanda is there was great confusion about it. So there was this whole thing about, was Rwanda about just basically taking people and putting them there? Was it about they would go to Rwanda, have their asylum claim processed, and if they passed, they could come to the UK. If not, they would stay in Rwanda. When the actual point was, no, everybody just stays in Rwanda. Okay, fine. Let just I've mentioned that as an issue, and we can move on from that. But that is an issue. The bigger issues being Rwanda's thousands of miles away, okay, and the price that we were told in terms of how much it would cost to send an asylum seeker from Britain to Rwanda was about £1 million a head. And by the way, I think that was probably mostly bullshit, as in I think it probably would have been a lot more expensive. As in, I think £1 million was like the minimum cost. That was probably what it was gonna cost under a completely, if someone didn't have a lawyer and sued, and I don't know, the Good Law Project got involved and all that stuff. I mean, so I'm saying I think £1 million a head was a best case scenario. But let's go on £1 million a head. So at the end of 2024, there were 112,187 asylum seekers in the UK. To take them all to Rwanda under this, again, very conservative cost of £1 million, that's 112 billion quid. Okay, so that's getting into the realms of like what we spend on the NHS every year. That's insane. I'm really sorry, but that's demented to have thought that would work. Like, it's sorry, Rwanda is just a bad idea. I want to have a really a free-flowing, cogent discussion on this, because I think we need to. I think the left, and they're like, this is only women and children, and there's like 5 of them, and they're in some hotel in Fulham. That is nonsense, and we need to stop that. But the right saying there's some magical like fix to this, which involves some Eastern African country, is insane as well. I think there just needs to be a better solution to this problem. And I think the people who can come up with it, even if it just sounds good, I think they've got a good shot at winning the next general election. Because, again, I want to stress this to you when you travel around the country. When you get out of London, this is a really big issue. People are really upset about this. They're upset about it happening, but more than that, they're upset about it happening, being lied to about it happening, being told that it's not happening. The thing that's happening in front of them is somehow not happening. They're being told this by people in London. And then and then being told they're racists if they bring it up, because they're just being fantasists and they are believing right-wing Facebook ads or whatever it is. So yeah, this is not a situation that can go on the way it is. Do I have a great idea? I mean, I've got a few ideas. Here's the thing. I've got a few ideas around the migrant crisis, the small boats, the migrant hotels. I'm scared to talk about them here. I will someday. At some point, I probably will. But I'm actually genuinely, in the same way that I put off doing this video for a very long time. I'm sat here and I could go over some of my ideas to end this video, and I don't want to, because actually the blowback would be quite extreme, even if my ideas are quite sensible, because I don't think we're there yet, which is insane. So instead of doing that in this video, what I'd like to do is just use this as the first step in a conversation about this. Let's try and take the whole left and right out of this. I know that's really, really difficult, but actually we really need to talk about this in a sensible way, without lies, without obfuscations, without, it's only women and children, or actually the Muslims are taking over the country and it's going to be an Islamic caliphate. And like, if we can just, I know you guys want to have all those arguments, and fine to have them if that's what you want to do, if that's how you get your kicks. If we can just put all that left and right wing crap just to the side for a bit and talk about how we solve this. Because here's the thing, I think this is a huge weapon for Reform to use, because they're the ones who want to talk about it. And sure, the Tories want to talk about it, but the Tories have a terrible record on this, right? So no one's going to believe the Tories. And the Tories don't really have anything sensible to say about it anyway, so it doesn't matter. What are they going on about? Rwanda, again, like a bunch of idiots. This is a huge, huge thing for Farage and Reform. And it could be the thing that makes them win the next election. And I know lots of you are going to say, oh, they're not going to win, and this is a flash in the pan. I mean, if you want to live in that fantasy world, go for it. But I want to tell you that just maybe travel outside of London or Manchester or one of the big cities and go to the towns, and you'll get it. It won't take you long to get why Reform are ahead in the polls. You just need to talk to a handful of people in a few towns, and and I promise you, if you have an open mind and you're in any way objective, you'll get it. Because people are annoyed, and whether you think that the things that they're annoyed about are worthy or unworthy, they are. And we live in a democracy, and everybody gets one vote. And there's more of those people than there are of the people who make a lot of money and live in nice neighborhoods in Cheshire or London. I mean, that's kind of the facts. So bear that in mind. And so take this as sort of my opening salvo on this. I would like to talk about it more. I'm interested to see how this video does, not just in terms of like how many watches or whatever. I'm interested in the comments. Are there any sort of constructive comments? I mean, I know, I made a video last week, was it, whatever, on Iran, Israel. I mean, I knew I was just going to get unbalanced, insane crap on that. I mean, that's obvious. With this, I don't know. On this, I have a hope that I will have more constructive, there will be people with constructive things to say. It won't just be the Muslims are replacing us, or you're being a racist, Nick, by talking about this. I'm hoping that there will actually be thoughtful comments on this, but we'll see. And if I get thoughtful comments on it, I'm happy to talk about it again. And I'm even happy to get into that thing that I was slightly, that I didn't want to get into at the end of this video, which is what do we do instead of the asylum hotels, the migrant hotels, particularly if it's not Rwanda, which I want to stress again, is a really stupid idea. So on that note, I will leave it here. I like to try and keep these things under 20 minutes to keep them snappy. I'm Nick Tyrone, neoliberal centrist dad. Thank you if you watched this far. Thank you very much. And please, if you have watched this far, give me a like and a subscribe. The subscribes really help a lot. It's that thing. I know every YouTuber is, kind of whines about it, but it's because it actually does affect the channel. And I'd like to keep having these conversations. So thank you for everything, and I'll see you soon. Bye.